The following account comes from Corporal Stefan Westmann, an NCO with the 29th Infantry Division of the German Army in 1914. His experiences include his division's invasion of Belgium in 1914. This is what he saw. Quote, "In the front of our trenches, near La Basalle, was a brickworks. The French used to put their bricks together as high as houses, and on top of these houses, there were machine guns, which prevented us from going near them. One day, we got the order to attack these brickworks and to take them. The only possible means to take them was by a surprise attack in full daylight, and we got orders to do so. We cut zigzag lines through our barbed wire entanglements, and at noon, we went over the top. We ran approximately 100 yards when we came under machine gun fire, which was so terrific that the losses were so staggering that we got orders to lie down and to seek shelter. Nobody dared to lift his head, because the very moment the machine gunners saw any movement, they let fly. And then the British artillery opened up, and the corpses, and the hats, and the arms, and the legs flew about, and we were cut to pieces. And all of a sudden, the enemy fire ceased. Complete silence came over the battlefield, and one of the chaps in my shell hole asked me, 'I wonder what they're up to.' Another one answered, 'Perhaps they're getting tea.' A third one says, 'Don't be a fool. Do you see what I see?' And we looked over the brim of our shell hole, and there between the brick heaps, out there, came a British soldier with a Red Cross flag, which he waved, and he was followed by a stretcher bearer who came slowly towards us and collected our wounded. We got up, still completely dumb from fear of death, and helped them to bring our wounded into our trenches. 1 hour later, a British Army doctor came out, again with a Red Cross flag, and he arranged a truce for 2 hours to let us collect our dead ones. I never forgot this generosity of the British, which I must say took place shortly before Christmas, 1914. Near La Basalle, in the slit trenches, we lay, and in front of us, we had the French trenches. Dug in, dug out. We really didn't know anymore what was the first trench, the front trench, and what were the reverse trenches. One day, we got orders to storm a French position. We got in, and my comrades fell left and right of me. But then I was confronted by a French corporal. He was with his bayonet at the ready, and I with my bayonet at the ready. For the first moment, I felt the fear of death. And in a fraction of a second, I realized that he was after my life as I was after his. I was quicker than he was. I tossed his rifle away and ran my bayonet through his chest. He fell, put his hands on the place where I had hit him, and then I thrust again. Blood came out of his mouth, and he died. I felt physically ill. I nearly vomited. My knees were shaking, and I was quite frankly ashamed of myself. I was a corporal there and then, but my comrades were absolutely undisturbed by what had happened. One of them had boasted that he had killed a French soldier with the butt of his rifle. Another one had strangled a captain, a French captain. A third one had hit somebody over the head with his spade, and they were ordinary men like me. One of them was a tram conductor. Another one was a commercial traveler. 2 were students. The rest were farm workers, ordinary people who never would have thought to do any harm to anyone. How could it come about that they were so cruel? I remember that. I remember then that we were told that the good soldier kills without thinking of his adversary as a human being. The very moment he sees in him a fellow man, he's not a good soldier anymore. But I had in front of me the dead man, the dead French soldier, and how I would liked him to have raised his hand. I would have shaken his hand, and we would have been the best of friends, because he was nothing like me, but a poor boy who had to fight, who had to go in with the most cruel weapons against a man who had nothing against him personally, who only wore the uniform of another nation, who spoke another language, but a man who had a father, a mother, and a family, perhaps, and so I felt. I woke up at some nights, sometimes drenched in sweat, because I saw the eyes of my fallen adversary, of the enemy, and I tried to convince myself, what would have happened to me if I haven't been quicker than he? What would have happened to me if I wouldn't have thrust my bayonet first into his belly? What was it that we soldiers stabbed each other, strangled each other, went for each other like mad dogs? What was it that we, who had nothing against them personally, fought with them to the very end and death? We were civilized people, after all. But I felt that the culture we boasted so much about is only a very thin lacquer, which chipped off the very moment we came in contact with cruel things like real war. To fire at each other from a distance, to drop bombs, is something impersonal. But to see each other to see each other's white in the eyes, and then to run with a bayonet against a man, it was against my conception and against my inner feeling. End quote. Corporal Stefan Westmann was later wounded in 1915 from a shell fragment. He survived the war and later became a medical officer. When the Nazis came to power in Germany, he immigrated to Britain and ran a successful gynecological practice on Harley Street. His account of his experiences perfectly encapsulates the disillusionment that brought men into war. When men were face to face with the murder and the killing, all of the preconceived notions of romance and nationalism went out the window. Because when you boil it down, war is murder. And even though it was sold to Stefan Westmann as a great adventure, Stefan was committing atrocious acts, and he knew it. And he was losing his humanity. We can learn from him. Never lose the humanity of your enemy. Never dehumanize each other, because once you do, you become like Stefan Westmann's comrades who boast about the murder and lose all feeling. Thank you for listening to Stefan Westmann's story, and remember it.